You just had another argument with your wife, and now things feel off. There's tension, she's being distant, and you're sitting there thinking, is she still going to be mad at me? Do I go and try to talk to her again and fix things immediately? Well, before you make things worse, you need to realize that what you do next matters more than the argument itself. Most guys don't lose their relationship because of the argument. They start to lose it in what they do after it. So in today's video, I'm going to break down what you should be doing after you had an argument with your wife so that you can rebuild your connection instead of making things more detrimental long term. And stay to the very end of this video because I'm not only going to help you with how to talk to her after an argument, I'm going to give you the key to making sure that you never end up in an argument with her ever again. Most men think arguments are a communication problem. And to a certain degree, that is true. There is obviously a right and wrong way to communicate, and if you improve those skills, your relationship, along with the rest of your life, will be better long term. However, arguments aren't necessarily caused by communication issues. It can make them worse, but it's not the root cause. So the problem is, you may be sitting there in your man cave after an argument, and you're pretty annoyed or frustrated or whatever the case may be, whatever emotion you have. But then you start to reflect on the conversation, or the argument, and you replay it in your head. And you come to the conclusion like, wait a minute, I don't think I explained myself well enough. She kept misunderstanding what I was trying to say and getting more mad at me, and I kept getting more frustrated. I just need to go to talk it through to her properly again and explain my side a bit more clearly, and we're going to be fine. Oh, and probably apologize for my part in the argument. Let me know in the comments if that sounds like I'm in the ballpark with what you experience with your significant other, because it sounds eerily familiar to me and what I experienced for over a decade. What you have to realize is on her end, that is not what's going on at all. After the conflict, she's not sitting there logically analyzing your words and being like, yeah, you know what? He made a great point about X, Y, and Z. His explanation was valid. Let's go ride into the sunset together now. She isn't even in the same galaxy as that thought. She's focused on something much deeper than that. She's reflecting on how you made her feel during the interaction. She replays the energy behind your words and isn't asking if you explained yourself well enough. What she's really asking is, does she feel emotionally safe with you right now? Safe doesn't mean nice or that you're agreeing with her side of things. It means, were you grounded or did you feel reactive in the argument? Did you feel centered to her, or were you trying to control the outcome and really trying to get your point across without even listening to her? And this is what leads us into the big mistake that most men make, and one that I struggle with for so long in my life. Because yes, it's not great to be in the argument in the first place, but what happens after the argument is one of the biggest contributors to her pulling away and her emotional safety being further damaged. For the longest time in my life, I would essentially be doubling down. Not only did I struggle in the regular conversations by turning them into arguments because I was reactive and would always be so focused on trying to explain my points of view, where basically she would get upset and then I would get more frustrated. After the argument, I would want to squash what happened because I really dislike conflict and I would feel so bad that I made her upset. The problem was, and take into account that during this decade of my life where I had failed relationships over and over again, I would do this with each woman. So the one constant was me. But the problem was I would essentially climb right back in the lion's den where she was still emotionally charged and I was trying to talk things out immediately. My thought process was, hey, I really want to clear things up and I want to apologize for making her upset and I don't want to leave things like they were. But do you know what would happen? It would start off okay and I would apologize and she might kind of engage a little bit, but then the conversation would start again and I would slowly turn the conversation into trying to explain what I really meant. How do you think that went over? So not only was I trying to resolve something while she's still emotionally reacting to it, I led the conversation down the road of solution mode. And here, let me just clearly explain what went wrong. The reality is I would keep making this mistake over and over, no matter the relationship, because I didn't understand how differently she was experiencing conflict. I kept thinking they were being unreasonable and punishing me because the things I was saying made perfect logical sense. I was clueless about the emotional processing aspect of the feminine side. So learning what I know now, aside from not doubling down on trying to explain logically my side of the argument, it's important to give her a bit of space so that she can process what happened emotionally. And that is a key component of this 3-phase model that you should follow if you want to lead better in your relationship. And you find yourself sitting after an argument wondering, hey, I don't want to make this worse. So phase 1 is regulate. What you have to start with phase 1 is being able to regulate yourself and not react. You're not trying to regulate her because she's obviously going through an emotional aspect. You're not trying to regulate the situation. You have to regulate yourself. Because right after an argument, your instinct more often than not is to react. You feel the tension and uncertainty. And in my example I gave, you feel bad and your mind immediately goes to like, I need to fix it now. But if you move from the place of tension and you're unsettled by what happened, and then you try to get her back into conversation to fix things, you're probably going to end up like I did over and over, making things a lot worse by getting back into the same frustrated explanation pattern. If you can't stay calm after conflict, she can't feel safe coming back. So regulate yourself first, because your emotion plus her guaranteed emotion is a recipe for disaster. Phase 2 is, and I alluded to this earlier, but you have to create some space for her without completely withdrawing. As I mentioned, because you had an argument that may have turned into a bad fight, she's going to be emotionally charged on the other end. And there's a high percentage chance you made her feel completely unsafe and unheard. If you try to reconnect immediately without letting the dust settle a bit, you're going to get what I always ended up getting. You're going to add pressure onto her to resolve the situation when she's feeling a certain type of way about you and her experience with you right now. That is going to make her either pull away or just get into another conflict with you right then and there. You have to allow her nervous system to settle down and let her process the emotions for a bit to make any re-engagement to settle the matter even possible. By the way, her processing her emotions and settling down doesn't mean that a bit of space will make her less upset at you, but you need to let the emotional charge from that moment dissipate a bit. You have to allow things to breathe a little, because when her nervous system settles down, she no longer feels the same need to defend herself or pull away from you. Okay, that brings us to phase 3, and this is where I have the great experience in doing the mistake of trying to rush things. In phase 3, you want to re-engage with her properly. When you've done the first 2 phases right by regulating yourself and then allowing for some space for her nervous system to breathe, it becomes a lot more natural. When you re-engage, you don't come in trying to win. You don't come in trying to prove your point again. And you don't come in trying to fix everything post-haste. You have to come in with a grounded tone. Leave the assumptions at the door and don't put any added pressure onto her. And the mindset is this: you're not trying to win. You're just trying to understand her without losing yourself emotionally. Now let's make this a little bit more practical for you. When you make it to phase 3 and you start talking with her, how do you actually do it in a way that doesn't make things a lot worse? Well, first, know that you don't need the perfect words. You need the right tone and the right intention. And that starts with this principle: say less, observe more. I know this is overused, but God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And most men talk too much in these moments to try and get back into the justifications and trying to cover every angle of what happened. But the more you talk, the more you're going to go right back down the rabbit hole of explaining your side instead of observing. It's going to be very hard to recover from that. So instead, shut up and listen to her. Listen to her with the intent of understanding her. And when it's your chance to speak, you slow it down, you keep it grounded, and you ask her thoughtful, open-ended questions where she can express emotionally. Remember, I said leave the assumptions at the door. Your goal is not to re-engage with her and then do an interrogation. You want to invite her to reconnect and clear the air. There's a difference. Interrogation feels like asking her, why did you do that? Or why are you reacting like this? The invitation sounds like, help me understand what that felt like for you. Like I said, you're not assuming and you're not accusing her of anything. You're simply opening the door and letting her speak. You don't jump in to respond, you reflect. But don't be robotic about reflecting. Do it in a grounded way where you actually give a crap what she's sharing with you. You can reflect to her and then you can say things to her like, so what I'm hearing is, and then repeat the core thing she said and then how she said it made her feel. Or you can say, that felt frustrating for you because, and then same thing, just repeat the gist of what she said and how she expressed that it made her feel. This shows that you're actually listening and you're allowing her to express her feelings. And this is the key, without trying to solution it right away. I am telling you, this is way easier than trying to get your point across and trying to be all logical, and it does wonders on her emotional state for you. You could literally have the greatest solution in the history of all solutions to the issue, but if you don't make her feel validated and heard, that solution is worthless. Reflect back to her her feelings so that it shows an understanding, and make sure there's no urgency and pressure to resolve everything in one conversation. When you do that, your outcome is going to be much more positive because she's going to respond to you much differently. Now that brings us to something that is even more important than what I just shared with you about how to properly show up with her after an argument. And that is the transformation you need to make that will literally give you the skill that dramatically changes how conflict happens in your marriage. And that doesn't mean you just shut down and avoid arguments, and certainly doesn't mean you need perfect communication, like I mentioned. The secret to what makes a relationship work really well is being a man who leads emotionally. This means it's not that you're avoiding arguments, it's that they don't happen because you don't lose yourself in her emotions, and that prevents them from happening in the first place. So how do you do that? You have to develop the skill of being a grounded leader. And when you do this, it completely changes the game for your relationship and for your own peace, to be honest. There's no two ways about it. You're going to run into moments where your wife is being more emotional in conversations or certain situations, but when you understand that she's generally not being irrational and it's really a normal experience in feminine energy, you can utilize this knowledge to not react at all. As part of being a grounded leader with self-respect, you will make sure you have healthy boundaries and enforce them where required. So if you are trying to validate her emotional experience and you're making her feel heard, but for whatever reason she's still being rude to you in that conversation, you calmly tell her that you understand how she feels, but you won't be continuing the conversation until she's able to speak nicely to you. Right there, you're not arguing with her. You're not trying to prove any point or explain logic. You're simply just setting a boundary. But the key is to actually enforce it, because you may say something like that and she's going to be still emotionally charged and she's going to retort with something to poke you. It is there where you cannot react and get pulled back in. If you do this consistently, you are changing the way her nervous system responds to you. Whether you believe this or not, this is how attraction is built, because you're not going to be walked all over, first of all, and you're not going to become emotionally charged right back at her in the face of her emotions. You're setting the standard in the relationship, and she will have increased respect for you, and that increased respect is what fuels attraction. Do this, have discipline to work on developing your leadership skills, and combine them with the appropriate communication with her, and yes, you will never argue again. You can disagree without spiraling into emotional chaos every single time. It's a great place to be, and it isn't a fairy tale no matter what anybody tells you. If you're watching this video and having constant arguments with your wife and things don't really seem to be getting better, you need structure and a way to understand what's actually happening fast. Because if you're in these arguments all the time and you notice your wife becoming more distant overall, you are running the risk of her disconnecting emotionally underneath the surface. And once that happens, you could be in a situation where you're going to be completely blindsided by her all of a sudden talking about separation or possible divorce. So don't make the mistake of sitting on your hands thinking things will magically get better. I'm telling you from the experience of myself many times and that of my clients, don't brush it off. Go watch the free masterclass linked in the pinned comment and description below, and it's going to break down a very clear framework of how to rebuild connection with your wife. It absolutely works, and it will change your life if you're serious about turning things around. And if you want to know why your reaction is making things worse, if you notice her pulling away, go watch this next video right here.